Hello again, sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and special edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and meteorologist, DT from Weather Risk, your commander of chaos, your colonel confusion, and captain catastrophe. Let's talk about this week in weather. A lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. I know a lot of folks are disappointed. The southeast low is going to fly off the coast, not come up the coast in any way whatsoever. And most of the next 10 days, 11, 12 days looks pretty mild and really quite inactive. So a lot of people are giving up the winter. And I'm not yet ready to give up on the winter. So let's get right to it, of course. So these are different topics we'll mention. You know, we are in the MJO at phase 7 to February 10th, which is a mild pattern and a snowless pattern. But things look a lot better after February 12th and 13th. So let's see what happens here. First, I want to mention again, here's the website, if you haven't been to it before. And then here's the shop page. You got all different products you can get here. So for my commodities and for snow removal, the daily mid-Atlantic forecast, the 30-day, and that sort of stuff. And then here, of course, is this is the grain website, for my grain stuff. And then this here's the snowstorm page. And up to about 9,000 followers now. There's on the Twitter page, and over here is the Threads page. And then, of course, here's the Facebook page. There you go. All right, let's get right to it. First, I want to mention that there's a big jump here going on in ENSO region 3.4. That's the critical region that they use to figure out El Nino or El La Nina neutral conditions. As you can see, we reached a peak here on January 1st, and we've been dropping ever since, down from, let's say, plus 2.1 centigrade above normal. There's 2.1 right in here. And then we reached a low value of 1.55. Now we jump back up to about 1.8, as you can see. And what's happened is you see this little burst of red here. Okay, this is where you are right now. See the black line, right? Okay, so these are longitude, latitude along the equator right here. There's South America, there's Indonesia, there's India. Okay, follow Africa. So, and then here's your time frame. So this is all, you can see the time frame all the way back. This is September, October, January, so on and so forth. But the point is, you can see here, there's your time frame. This is burst of red right here. So the red means westerly winds. So the winds are blowing from the west to the east, and that's driving warm water back from the equatorial Pacific in Indonesia into region 3.4, which is over here in the middle of the central Pacific off the coast of South America. So as a result, you're seeing temperatures jump up a little bit. So I have this little burst here, and the forecast calls for continued westerly winds. So it would not surprise me at all if the El Nino made a bit of a comeback. Now, this is just a temporary thing. This is not a big deal. The El Nino is not resurging. But there is a temporary warming here going on here. So I thought I'd point that out to you. And the reason why it's kind of important is because, when you have a strong El Nino events, or even super strong El Nino events, you almost always have at least one big East Coast snowstorm. Sometimes you have two, but sometimes one. So we'll see. I just want to point that out to you. All right. Let's take a look at the pattern here and see what's going on. Well, here, this is the upper air pattern for the next 5 days. And I talked about this before over on the Twitter page and on the other weather videos, Facebook page, what have you. So here's the pattern here for Friday, right? Tonight, okay? So you have the big trough coming into the western U.S., upper low in Alaska, trough down here. Other trough leaving the East Coast. Here's your polar vortex up in Greenland. So it's a very positive NAO, very positive AO. And there's your big ridge between them, okay? So this is, huge. And with this piece of energy here at the base is going to undercut it. This is called undercutting when it busts underneath the ridge. And then you get an upper low forming here. So this originally had me very excited as the upper low here in Texas and Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and I thought it was going to bust through to the Carolinas. Now, originally what I thought was going to happen was this upper low was going to be over Newfoundland. You see what happens over here. And because this would be further north, this system would go straight east, and it moves off the Carolina coast. You end up getting a big snowstorm for portions of North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, maybe even West Virginia, eastern Tennessee. But what happened is, look at the upper low here. It's not Newfoundland. It's way south. It's due east of Cape Cod. This is much further south than it's supposed to be. So this is a big change. And then the other feature is this trough coming in rapidly to California. This acts as a kicker. So this comes in here and kicks us east. This comes in here and kicks us east. And then, of course, the upper low forces it to drop to the south. So let me show you what I mean here. Now, this is valid for Monday night, February 5. You can see where the upper low is. You remember now, originally it's here in Texas, okay, Arkansas. See this very close to Texarkana, which is right here. Let's say the corner of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Texarkana, right? That's where the center is. Now, as we saw, look where it is. Let me blow this up. You can see it a little bit. It's actually dropped southward. There's Texarkana. It's gone southeast. See that? In northern Florida. That's way further south. And again, you can see the upper low. So this has to go underneath the upper low. Now, normally when you're on a snowstorm for the East Coast, you want to keep this low, which is the 50-50 low, north of Newfoundland up here. But it's way south of that. So it really screws the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic states in particular, and this system slides out to the east. Again, also, see this trough coming in? This trough builds down into California, and the ridge builds up. Comes down, the ridge builds up. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the ridge builds into Minnesota, and that acts as a kicker. As this ridge is building, it's driving this feature further and further and further and further to the east. So there you go. Now look where the vortex was. Remember, it's in Alaska. Now it's in north central Canada. The Arctic jet is way up here. So all this is mild Pacific air, and the pattern is just crap. Really easy. So as you can see. So, and you can see the text, the upper 500 millibar is why we're not going to see this southeast low become a winter storm for the Mid-Atlantic or the southern Appalachians at all. The southern low moves off the southeast coast, but the position intensity of the second upper low is just way too far south of Newfoundland. And we have this increasing ridge here, which is just forces it off the coast. There you go. And to show you the difference, again, when I was excited about this earlier, this is with the, now this is from January 27th, admittedly, but you can see this is about, the 500 low, the GFS ensemble was supposed to be, southeast of Hatteras or due east of Wilmington. You see that Myrtle Beach. This is a classic Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Delaware snowstorm, southern New Jersey, if the air is cold enough. But as you can see, look where it's going to be. Not even close to this. Way down here off of Florida coast, Daytona Beach. Not even close enough. So big differences there. All right. Over the next 5 days, these you can see no precipitation because everything's forced to the south and Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, New England, not significant. Temperatures in New England, they're above normal because their normal means are colder in February than ours in the Mid-Atlantic here. But Mid-Atlantic, it's close to normal, not a little on the mild side. Southeast is about normal, and then the Ohio Valley is way above normal, and the Midwest is just a blowtorch. In Minnesota, 30 degrees above normal, 25 degrees above normal in northern Iowa. 12 degrees above normal, Chicago and St. Louis. It's pretty warm out there. All right, let's look at our teleconnections. So we're looking at our 4 teleconnections, 2 on the Pacific side, the red line, 2 on the Atlantic side. Okay, so the 2 on the Pacific side is the EPO, the Alaskan Ridge or Trough, that's what that is, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. And the West Coast, the PNA, which is a West Coast Ridge or West Coast Trough. So let's take a look at that. These are different combinations. You can have positive, negative, neutral of each one, different combinations here. And then on the Atlantic side, you have the Arctic Oscillation, whether the polar vortex is strong or whether it's weak, which allows the Arctic air to come southward. And then you have the NAO, which is the blocking pattern in Greenland, Northeast Canada, Labrador, whether it's positive or negative. So there again, that affects the different patterns here quite strongly. So let's look at these. Let's look at the Atlantic side first. So on the Atlantic side, the AAO, so here's the black line dots of where we are right now. So we're generally been positive. See this right now? That's where we've been positive. And the same thing with the NAO, positive. Now, it stays positive up through about February 5. Then the models start dropping in negative, and they keep it negative. And by middle of February, it's strongly negative. Some of the models are moderate to strongly negative. And the NAO, the Greenland block, we have a vortex here. As we saw, we have a big vortex here in Alaska. So that's a positive NAO. And that matches what we see here, positive NAO. But look what happens. Stays positive, then begins to drop, so that by February 9th or 10th, we're slightly negative and then turn a little negative more towards the middle of the month. Now, if we look at our extended values, here's the GFS extended 35-day. And again, the way to read this is your yellows and oranges and reds, these are positive values. Your light greens are negative values. The dark greens, almost blue, these are strongly negative values, okay? So Here's the Arctic oscillation with strongly positive. Then it starts going slightly negative around February 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. And then by mid-February, look how negative it is on almost all these different runs. These are 30 different members of the GFS ensemble. See all 30? 0 all the way to 30, right? And you can see they're all extremely negative. Okay, right through until early March. That's interesting. Here's the NAO. Again, positive right now for next week. Then we start going neutral February 5 to February 10th, 11th. And then after the 12th or 13th, we start going negative. And then it gets really negative by the end of the month. So that's interesting. Okay, let's look at the Pacific side now, right? So here's the P&A, where we have a positive values or a ridge. And then it drops towards neutral. Then it kind of stays towards neutral. And then it jumps up a little bit towards positive after February 15th. And the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. What you want, if you like cold and snow in the eastern U.S., you want this to be negative. So right now, as you can see, we're generally slightly positive. Look at the black dot, slightly positive. And then we drop down to negative, then we do a positive, then negative again. So kind of an oscillating pattern here. Now we are getting a strong negative signal after February 11th or 12th. And we can see that on the extended models here. So this is the GFS extended, the 35-day. And again, look at the P&A here. It's strongly positive in the middle of the month in particular. Then it goes negative again toward the end of the month a little bit. And then the P&A here, excuse me, this was the EPO. I should have meant that. Got this backward. Here's the EPO. Neutral, slightly positive, then negative again after February 15th. That's when the pattern flip really might happen here. And here's the GFS P&A. Positive, slightly positive, then a neutral cycle here in the middle of February, February 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then strongly positive by after February 14, 15. And then again, that's when the pattern might flip. So that's what we're looking for. Now let's look at our MJO and see where that's going. All right, right now the MJO is in phase 7, right? Now the thing is, over the past couple of weeks, we've constantly seen the MJO model show this little loop-de-loop, the stall in phase 6 and phase 7. But so far, as you can see, we haven't seen a stall. We have not seen that. Now, the models do show a stall here. This is the next 2 weeks. So here's the GFS ensemble, right? And here is the European. Now, you notice the loop-de-loop. See the curl right here, the stall right in here? Both models have it, right? And this takes us to February 15th, so it keeps it in phase 7. One of the reasons this might be happening is because of this. This burst here, westerly winds, is affecting, I think, maybe locking the MJO in the stall. So I'm wondering if that's the case here. There's probably a connection between the two. In any event, so there we are, phase 7. Now, what does that mean? It ain't good. Let's just put it that way. This is phase 7 in February. Boy, does this suck. So here's the overall pattern. The image on the left shows MJO in phase 7. You can see this huge ridge here. The R stands for ridge, right? And then we blow this up a little more. You can see it. Bring the front. There we go. And bring this front as well. So you can see there's a huge ridge here. We have a trough in the Western Atlantic and another trough in the Central Pacific. There is some blocking in northern Greenland, mostly on the Pacific side of the Arctic. So as you can see here, and this sort of pattern, if you look at the black lines, there's no flow from Arctic air in Canada getting into the U.S. None. Very mild pattern. A snow's pattern. Now, it's not a super blowtorch in some areas, but in some areas it is. You can see pretty warm, generally east of the Mississippi River. And in terms of rainfall, well, there is some precipitation in the Delta, the Mississippi Valley, into the Ohio Valley, a little bit Pennsylvania, New York, but Mid-Atlantic and Southeast still remains kind of dry for February phase 7. All right. And when we look at the pattern, it ain't great. It really isn't. So the arrival of this other major trough here on the west coast, February 7th and 8th, that pushes the ridge eastward, and then the upper low and trough, which was off the southeast coast, that goes in the Western Atlantic Ocean. So this pushes this, which pushes this. This pushes this, which pushes this. All right? So this is the kicker. Sends everything downstream. Meanwhile, look at the Arctic jet. Way north. The polar vortex is way north. That's where all the cold air is. Now, as we get towards February 10th, we begin to see kind of a change in the pattern here. We're getting this sort of ridging here a little bit. Now, okay, some sort of short wave attacking the ridge, trying to knock it down here a little bit. The ridge is still there, but it's flattened a little bit. But we still have this trough on the west coast. So this trough in the California west coast, the ridge. Trough, ridge, trough, ridge. So we still have that ridge here, right? But it's getting attacked by this short wave coming through the Great Lakes, trying to knock it down. So it's the beginning, maybe, of a pattern change, a pattern shift. Now, if we look at our temperatures and precipitation, it really looks dry in the mid-Atlantic and New England. There's no precipitation, so and it's generally mild. New England, again, is quite mild. The mid-Atlantic and southeast, a couple degrees below normal, mainly from February 6th to 8th or 9th because of that system off the coast. We're getting strong north winds. So that's why. In fact, let me see if you can show it here. Again, when this moves off the coast here, this low, we're going to get this strong north wind. It's going to pull down some seasonally cold air for a couple of days. So that's one of the reasons why the temperature anomalies are not, not extremely warm on the East Coast, New England, Mid-Atlantic. But west of the Appalachians, you can see the blowtorch here. So again, we're talking blowtorch for some areas, but it depends on where you are. So a lot of meteorologists are using the term blowtorch, they're using it as a general term. And yeah, this is a mild pattern, there's no doubt about that. But there are nuances to this. So, if you're telling people blowtorch in your area and the temperature is only 2 degrees above normal, that kind of throws people off and makes you think, what are the meteorologists talking about? So yes, it's really warm in the plains in the Midwest relative to normal, but on the East Coast, the Southeast, not that warm in the 6 to 10 day. Okay, not, a couple degrees either way here. Now, eventually, by the time we get to day 9 or 10, this happens. Okay, so the short wave begins to come east, this short wave here, and it drives a cold front eastward. All right, so east of the front, you have the high off the coast now, no longer bringing down north winds. You're now getting south winds. Let me call it marker here. You can see it. So this high, which was up here, now eventually giving us north winds, is now off the coast. You're getting south winds, the interaction of the front and the low and the high. You're getting southwest winds, and the temperatures turn really mild February 9th and 10th, okay, at the end of the 6 to 10 day. All right? Now, once this front comes through, temperatures go back to normal. Now, in the week 3 and week 4 time frame, here we go. Okay, there's the MJO going into phase 8. Finally, yay. GFS, European, the Australians, the Canadian, the Japanese, they all have it going to phase 8 here for middle of and end of February. Now, notice they do move it into the neutral circle. I don't know if that's true. This is just end of the cycle, and almost always the MJO tends to go into the neutral circle early on. If you look at the MJO from back in December and January, they all had it going into neutral circle after phase 6. It didn't happen. So don't really worry about it going into the neutral circle. I think that's bullshit. I think it will continue to go into phase 8 and phase 1 as we go into the end of February and March. So let's just assume that's true. And here we go. This is phase 8. I showed this last week. That's what this is. This is the snowstorm signal. And you can see from with the upper air pattern what it looks like here. There's your huge blocking pattern, very, very strong negative NAO, Greenland block, very strongly negative AO. Huge negative anomaly on the East Coast. Cold air is a great looking map, if we can get that. It looks like we're going to get it, but again, given this winter, we got to be a little cautious. 11 to 15 days sees the pattern change according to the MJO. This is what's driving it. Okay, so the ridge forms on the west coast. You can see that. Okay, the trough begins to develop. We're getting north winds, northwest flow, finally bringing the Arctic air in. So by the time we get to February 13th, 14th, we have this map, and this is nice looking. This is a cold map. There's a trough in the Ohio Valley. Not off the East Coast, just west of the Appalachians, looks like. The vortex looks like it's trying to come southward. You can see the elongation here. And there's a very strong ridge, very amplified from Idaho and California, Oregon, all the way up into Alaska. So this is a very impressive looking cold return map by the middle of February. Now, operationally, the GFS here extended has a snowstorm for the mid-Atlantic here on February 12th or 13th. I'm just letting you know. I'm not buying it. I'm just putting it out there. Now, again, the vortex does move around. I want to make sure everybody understands this, okay? So this is actually from January, a month ago. There is the vortex, this is the end of December, January, when really, really mild. There is the vortex, the dark area over the Arctic region, right? Okay, and then we saw it elongated on January when it turned utterly cold, bitterly cold. The vortex elongated, almost split. So this sort of movement, a splitting of the vortex, is very common. It moves around all the time. This is from 2018. So you can see this is Canada. There's northern states here, right? There's Greenland. So there is the positive anomaly of the vortex here. Okay, then it swung around over here. Okay, the vortex, and you had an elongation here, right? So then you had a cold air outbreak back in 2000. This is February 5 to February 23. right? Then it moved over towards Siberia. We had a positive anomaly here. Okay, it moved, shifted. So you can see it constantly moves around like this. This is very common during the winter months. And when it elongates, you get Arctic outbreaks and occasional snowstorms. Now, you can also get a big polar vortex split, which is a different thing altogether. But, you can also get an elongation. And we see that's exactly what's going to happen here. This is the polar vortex right now. Okay, February 4, 5, early next week. See how tight it is? All the lines around it. See this? Let me blow this up a little bit. You can see a little more. Okay, see how tight it is? Right like this? Right, okay? The top of the North Pole. All the Arctic air is wrapped up in here. All of it. Scandinavia, northern Russia, Mongolia, Siberia, all, but not in North America at all. Now, what happens is it shifts, it changes. So this is February 15th. So the vortex begins to change here. The warming occurs in Siberia and Alaska, Northwest Canada. The vortex elongates. You see how it elongates? This looks like an Arctic outbreak. And that's one of the reasons why you get this pattern. All right? And then as we go in towards February, continue to see another elongated pattern here. Okay? Okay, and strong warming, stratospheric warming here in the western half of the Arctic region, Alaska, Northwest Canada, and there's your elongated polar vortex. And if you go further down the road, what does this look like? Well, okay, this is February 15. This is the European extended. There's the GFS. A very, very strong negative anomaly here on the east coast of Mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley. Look at the huge blocking signature on both these models in Greenland. Huge ridge on the west coast. The vortex is coming south. Yeah, this has possibilities. We've seen this before, but my only point here is to say, no, the winter is not over yet. As long as the MJO goes into phase 8, as long as this is correct, and then phase 1 in late February into March, we still have a shot at some additional winter storms. I know a lot of people are disappointed, so am I, but until this changes, we can't say. Now, suppose we go to February, end of February, phase 8 and 1 is done, and we've had nothing. Okay, fine, give it up. I get that. Okay, but I'm not giving up just yet. And then beyond that, here's another, the February 22nd, the European extended, and there's the GFS extended. Both models look at the very strong positive anomaly blocking signature in the Arctic region, Greenland, Arctic region. A negative anomaly southeast coast on both these models here, a moderate ridge here. Again, another possibility sometime around February 22nd. And then even beyond that, this is my last slide. This is for March 2nd. Really looks like a great pattern. Nice ridge on the west coast. You're getting Arctic flow, strong negative anomaly mid-Atlantic, very strong positive anomaly here in Greenland. It looks like a promising pattern. Now, again, I know a long way out, and we've seen this before, but for the first time this winter, we've been in phase 8. Now, the last time we were in phase 8 was back in late November, December, but we had the raging El Nino and a positive IOD, so it didn't mean anything. It didn't produce any, when the IOD, the Indian Ocean dipole, is super positive, the really warm water in the Indian Ocean really screws up the MJO so it doesn't operate normally. That's gone. The IOD has now been dead. It's been dead for 30 days. It's no longer a factor. So that means the MJO has a much bigger influence. And that's why I think we are going to get this pattern flip here and a shot for some serious winter storms mid-February, late February into the first half of March. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it right now. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I will see you over on the Twitter page, over on the website, and over on the snowstorm page.